Ambassador Vexhali's forearms trembled as she approached the quantum communication array deep within the Galactic Council's emergency bunker. The crystalline structures around her pulsed with an eerie blue light, casting shadows that seemed to dance with her mounting terror. Above them, through layers of reinforced planetary crust, the Devourers continued their relentless consumption of Kepler Prime's surface. The sound reached them even here, a grinding, scraping noise that spoke of entire cities being dissolved into their component atoms. Vexhali had witnessed the fall of 17 worlds in the past month, each one stripped bare in a matter of hours. The Devourers moved like a living plague across the galaxy, their bioships converting matter directly into more of themselves. No weapon the Council possessed could even slow them down. "The transmission is ready, Ambassador," whispered Technician Moore, Geth, his scales pale with fear. The young reptilian had lost his homeworld just days ago. Like so many others, he had nowhere left to run. Vexhali nodded, her throat sacs inflating with nervous energy. In her long diplomatic career, she had negotiated peace between warring empires, mediated trade disputes that spanned centuries, and helped establish the very laws that governed interstellar civilization. But she had never done anything like this, never violated the most fundamental taboo of galactic society. She was about to contact humanity. The quantum array hummed to life, its crystalline nodes rotating in complex patterns as it pierced through normal space-time to reach the quarantined Sol system. For 300 years, that system had been off-limits to all civilized species. A buffer zone maintained by automated defense platforms and dire warnings broadcast in every known language. Warning: Deathworld inhabitants. Approach prohibited. Specification: extreme hazard. Vexhali had helped write those warnings herself back when she was young and idealistic. Convinced that keeping humanity contained was a moral imperative, she remembered the debates in the council chambers, the horrified testimonies from the few species that had made contact with humans before the quarantine, the tales of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a world so hostile that most council members couldn't survive on its surface for more than a few minutes without environmental suits. A world where the very air was poison to most galactic life forms, where the gravity would crush the bones of delicate species, where creatures called sharks and bears and venomous snakes were considered normal parts of the ecosystem, where the dominant species had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would be classified as active warfare zones by civilized standards. The humans were apex predators, from a world that specialized in creating apex predators. They had eyes that faced forward, the mark of a hunter species. Their bodies were dense with muscle and bone designed to withstand impacts that would shatter other beings. They could run for hours without stopping, track prey across vast distances, and their bite strength could crush metal alloys. But what truly terrified the galaxy wasn't their physical capabilities. It was their minds. Humans were pack hunters with the intelligence to create weapons of mass destruction. They were a species that had somehow managed to split the atom while still settling disputes by throwing rocks at each other. They had reached their moon before they had achieved global peace. They had built computers before they had eliminated poverty from their world. They were chaos given form, violence wrapped in just enough civilization to make them truly dangerous. And now, with the Devourers eating their way through the galaxy like acid through flesh, these dangerous Deathworlders were the Council's only hope. "Signal established," Morgeth reported, his voice barely audible. "We're connected to the Sol System Defense Network." A new voice crackled through the speakers. Human speech, translated by the communication array's universal interpreter. It sounded calm, almost bored. "This is Sol Defense Station Alpha. You are attempting to contact a quarantine system. State your business or disconnect." Vexhali forced her breathing sacs to steady themselves. She had practiced this moment in her mind 1,000 times during the flight to Kepler Prime. But now, with the weight of galactic civilization resting on her words, her carefully prepared speech seemed inadequate. "This is Ambassador Vexhali of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying across light years in an instant. "I am speaking on behalf of all member species. We require assistance." Silence stretched across the quantum link. Then, a sound that chilled Vexhali to her core. Human laughter. Not the melodic trills of the singers or the harmonic vibrations of the crystal folk. This was something primal, predatory. The sound a hunter might make when cornered prey came running back to them. "Ambassador Vexhali," the human voice repeated, drawing out her name like they were tasting it. "I have your file here. Authored the Deathworld containment protocols, voted to establish the Sol quarantine. Gave a rather passionate speech about the dangers of uncontrolled predator species, if memory serves. Something about how humanity represented an existential threat to galactic peace. Vex Harley's arms curled inward defensively. The humans had been listening to their communications all along, recording their debates, their votes, their fears. Of course they had. She should have expected it.
The situation has changed, she managed to say. We face a threat that endangers all life in the galaxy.
The Devourers. Ah, we know about your little bug problem, the human interrupted. Been watching them eat your worlds for weeks now. Fascinating, really. A hive mind species that converts matter directly into biomass. Very efficient. They're currently processing your capital world's population centers, aren't they? I estimate you have maybe 6 hours before they reach your bunker. The casual tone made Vex Haley's skin crawl. The human spoke of genocide like they were discussing weather patterns. This was exactly why her species had voted to quarantine Earth. Humans didn't just lack empathy, they seemed to find suffering amusing. Then you understand the urgency. Vex Harley pressed on. The Devourers cannot be stopped by conventional means. They adapt to our weapons, consume our ships, turn our technology against us. In 6 months, they will have devoured every inhabited world in the galaxy. Probably less than that, the human agreed cheerfully. They're accelerating their consumption rate. Each world they process makes them stronger, smarter. At current expansion rates, I'd give you 3 months, tops. We are willing to negotiate, Vex Harley said, hating herself for the desperation in her voice. The Council is prepared to offer significant compensation for human assistance. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, territorial concessions. Territorial concessions? The human's laughter returned, darker this time. Ambassador, in 3 months there won't be any territory left to concede. You're not offering us payment. You're offering us table scraps from a meal that's already been eaten. Vex Haley felt her hope crumbling. She had known this was a desperate gamble, but she had clung to the belief that even humans couldn't want to see the galaxy consumed. She had been wrong. They were going to let everyone die rather than risk their own safety. However, the human continued, and Vex Harley's hearts lurched with renewed hope. It happens that we have our own interest in seeing the Devourers dealt with. They represent a potential threat to Earth, and we've never been fond of letting threats develop unchecked. You'll help us? Vex Harley whispered. We'll solve your problem, the human corrected. But understand this, Ambassador. Once we leave Sol, the quarantine is over. Forever. Humanity will take its place in the galaxy. And there won't be any more talk of containment protocols or Deathworld restrictions. Are you prepared for that consequence? Vex Harley thought of the grinding sound above them, of the 17 dead worlds, of the billions of lives already lost. What choice did they have? Yes, she said. We accept those terms. Excellent. Expect the first human ships to arrive at your location in 72 hours. I suggest you evacuate to a safe distance. Things are going to get messy. The connection terminated, leaving Vex Harley alone with the weight of what she had just done. She had not just called for help, she had unleashed humanity upon the galaxy. After 3 centuries of careful containment, she had opened the cage and invited the predators out to play. As if summoned by her thoughts, Councillor Threshmack materialized in the bunker's main chamber. The elderly ethereal's form flickered with distress patterns, his translucent body betraying his emotional state. The transmission was completed? He asked, though they both knew he had been monitoring the communication. The humans have agreed to assist, Vex Harley confirmed. Their fleet will arrive within 3 days. And the price for this assistance? Vex Harley met his gaze directly. The end of the quarantine. Humanity will be free to expand into galactic space. Threshmack's form pulsed with alarm. You have condemned us all, Ambassador. We sought to save the galaxy from one threat, only to invite in another. The Devourers consume matter, humans consume civilizations. The Devourers would have killed us all, Vex Harley replied. At least this way, something of our cultures might survive. Will it? Threshmack asked. Or will we simply trade quick death for slow domination? The humans are not our saviors, Vex Harley. They are opportunists who have waited 3 centuries for an excuse to break free of their cage. We have given them exactly what they wanted. Before Vex Harley could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bunker. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in strobing red as automated systems announced the obvious. Surface breach detected. Devourer forces approaching primary shelter. Estimated time to penetration. 4 hours, 12 minutes. Bex Harley looked up at the ceiling, knowing that somewhere far above them, the planet's final defenses were crumbling before the Devourer swarm. In 4 hours, this bunker would be breached. In 4 hours, she would be dead, unless the humans kept their promise. She had gambled the future of galactic civilization on the word of a species they had spent 3 centuries trying to contain. Now all she could do was wait and see if humanity's cure would prove worse than the disease. Deep in her heart, she suspected it would be. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retaliation, watching the tactical display paint a picture of galactic catastrophe in cold, precise detail. Red markers indicated consumed worlds, 17 of them in the past month, each one representing billions of lives extinguished in a matter of hours. The Devourer's expansion pattern showed a methodical intelligence behind their destruction, targeting industrial centers and population hubs with surgical precision. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Commander Jackson, the ship's tactical officer. His expression was grim as he gestured to the holographic display. "The Devourers aren't just consuming randomly. They're targeting worlds with the highest technological development first, absorbing both the population and infrastructure to fuel their expansion." Chen nodded, her dark eyes scanning the data streams flowing across her command interface. At 53, she had commanded humanity's defensive fleets for over 2 decades. But she had never faced anything like this. The Devourers represented a threat unlike anything in human military history, an enemy that literally ate everything in its path. "Ship status report," she ordered. "All vessels reporting ready status," came the reply from Communications Officer Torres. "The fleet is maintaining formation at the edge of the Kepler system. Dreadnought Vengeance is standing by with the prototype weapons. Carrier Groups Alpha through Delta have their bio-warfare squadrons fully loaded." Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The human fleet that had emerged from the Sol quarantine was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While the Council species had spent centuries building sleek, elegant vessels designed for exploration and peaceful commerce, humanity had crafted ships designed for war. The Retaliation herself was a testament to human engineering philosophy. 2 kilometers of armored death bristling with weapon systems that the Council would have classified as war crimes. Her sister ships formed a battle line that spoke of humanity's true nature, not explorers seeking knowledge, but predators seeking dominance. "Ma'am," Torres continued, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "It's Ambassador Vexley, the one who made the initial contact. Put her through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of what looked like an underground bunker. The 4-armed alien diplomat appeared haggard, her skin pale with stress. Behind her, Chen could see other Council species moving frantically between control stations. "Admiral Chen," Vex Harley began, her voice carrying barely controlled desperation. "The Devourer forces have penetrated our outer defenses. We estimate perhaps 2 hours before they breach our shelter. Can your fleet intervene?" Chen smiled, an expression that had made seasoned human Marines uncomfortable. When a predator smiled, it usually meant something was about to die. "We'll take care of your problem, Ambassador. But first, I need you to do something for us. Evacuate your bunker immediately and move to the coordinates I'm transmitting. Get at least 500 kilometers from your current position. Admiral, we cannot abandon our defensive positions. The shelter's shields are the only thing keeping the Devourers from detecting our life signs." "Ambassador." Chen's voice took on the patient tone of someone explaining something to a child. "Those shields aren't going to save you. The Devourers already know exactly where you are. They're just taking their time because they assume you're trapped. You have approximately 90 minutes to reach minimum safe distance before we begin our operation." "What operation? What are you planning to do?" Chen's smile widened. "Something the Council never gave us permission to try. We're going to show you why Earth was classified as a death world." The transmission ended, leaving Vexley staring at a blank screen. Chen turned to her weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, a woman whose specialty in bioweapons had made her invaluable during humanity's preparation for this moment. "Status on Project Pandora?" Chen asked. "All deployment systems ready, Admiral. We have enough concentrated samples to saturate the entire planet's surface. The delivery drones are loaded and standing by." Chen nodded. Project Pandora represented 3 decades of human biological warfare research, conducted in secret while the galaxy assumed they were safely contained. While the Council species had developed weapons designed to disable and destroy technology, humans had created something far more insidious. They had weaponized evolution itself. "Admiral," Commander Jackson interrupted, "long-range sensors are detecting massive Devourer movement on the planet's surface. They're converging on the bunker location. Estimated strength, Jesus. Over 2 million individual bioforms plus support structures. This isn't just a feeding swarm, it's a full-scale harvesting operation. Perfect, Chen replied. More targets. Signal the fleet. Begin Operation Exterminator. The human battle fleet moved with predatory grace toward Kepler Prime. The lead vessels were the heavy cruisers, ships whose primary purpose was to deliver concentrated firepower to planetary surfaces. Behind them came the specialist vessels that carried humanity's true gift to the galaxy. The Devourers had evolved to consume and adapt to technology. Their bioforms could absorb energy weapons, incorporate metallics into their structures, and turn captured ships into components of their ever-growing swarm. They were the perfect counter to conventional galactic warfare. They had never encountered humans. Drones away, Park reported, as the first wave of delivery systems launched from the fleet's bio-warfare carriers. These weren't the sleek, efficient designs preferred by Council militaries. They were crude, blocky devices that looked more like flying metal boxes than sophisticated weapons. They moved slowly, almost clumsily, toward the planet's surface. The Devourer's response was immediate. Bioforms rose from the planet's surface like a living cloud, intercepting the drones with casual efficiency. Acidic secretions melted through the crude metal casings, spilling their contents across the Devourer swarm. Direct hits confirmed, Jackson reported. The Devourers have destroyed 90% of the first wave. The biological payload has been dispersed across their formation. Excellent, Chen replied. Now we wait. Wait for what, Admiral? Asked a young ensign, confusion clear in his voice. Chen turned to face the bridge crew, all of whom were watching the tactical display with varying degrees of puzzlement. The Devourers showed no signs of distress. If anything, they seemed to be absorbing the biological material with the same efficiency they applied to everything else. What do you know about Earth's evolutionary history, Ensign? Chen asked conversationally. That it was violent, ma'am? Competitive? Competitive? Chen nodded. Earth didn't just produce apex predators. It produced biological arms races that lasted millions of years. Every defense that evolved was eventually countered by a better offense. Every adaptation was met with a counter-adaptation. For 3 billion years, life on Earth was engaged in constant, total warfare against itself. On the screen, the Devourer swarm continued its advance toward the evacuated bunker. But something was beginning to change in their movement patterns. Individual bioforms were moving more slowly, some beginning to lag behind the main group. The Devourers are adapted to absorbing conventional matter, Chen continued. They can process metals, plastics, organic compounds, anything they encounter. But they've never encountered Earth biology. Admiral, Park's voice held barely controlled excitement. We're seeing the first stage reactions. The Earth viruses are beginning to replicate. Earth viruses? The ensign asked. Common cold, Chen replied casually. Influenza, Ebola, smallpox, rabies, AIDS. About 300 different strains, all of them specially modified to be more aggressive and adaptable. Plus a few synthetic variants we developed specifically for this purpose. The tactical display was painting a clearer picture now. The Devourer swarm was breaking apart as individual bioforms began exhibiting erratic behavior. Some had stopped moving entirely. Others were attacking their own kind. You see, Chen explained, the Devourers made one critical mistake. They assumed that absorbing our biological weapons would give them immunity. Instead, they've just provided those weapons with a perfect breeding ground. My God, whispered Commander Jackson. You're killing them with diseases. We're not killing them, Chen corrected. We're doing something much worse. We're making them sick. The truth of her words became apparent as the hours passed. The Devourers didn't die. Their biology was too resilient for that. Instead, they became carriers. Earth's diseases, designed by evolution to be maximally infectious and disruptive, spread through the Devourer network like wildfire. Each infected bioform became a transmission vector, spreading the contagion to every other Devourer it encountered. Within 6 hours, the entire planet-side swarm was compromised. Bioforms that had once moved with perfect coordination now stumbled and fought among themselves. Their hive-mind connection became chaotic, filled with the biological equivalent of static. Their consumption rate dropped to near zero, as their systems struggled to cope with infections they had never evolved to handle. Second-wave drones launching, Park reported, delivering the payload to the orbital bioships. Chen watched as the infection spread beyond the planet's surface. The Devourer's greatest strength, their interconnected biology, had become their greatest weakness. Every ship they had, every bioform in their fleet became infected within hours. "Admiral," Torres called from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Vex Harley. They've reached the safe zone and are requesting an update on the situation." "Put her through." Vex Harley's image appeared on screen, this time transmitted from what looked like an emergency shelter constructed from salvaged equipment. Her four arms gestured frantically as she spoke. "Admiral, our long-range sensors are showing massive disruption in the Devourer formations. What has happened?" "Have you destroyed them?" "Not destroyed," Chen replied. "Neutralized. The Devourer threat to this world has been eliminated." "How? What weapons did you use?" Chen's predatory smile returned.
"The same weapons Earth used on us for millions of years."
"We gave them a taste of natural selection." "I don't understand." "The Devourers are sick, Ambassador. Very, very sick. They'll survive. Their biology is too adaptable for our diseases to actually kill them. But they'll be too busy fighting infections to consume anything else. By the time they develop immunity, we'll have had months to prepare stronger countermeasures." The full implications hit Vex Harley like a physical blow. Her species had developed elegant solutions to warfare. Energy shields, directed energy weapons, defensive systems designed to protect and preserve life. Humans had turned biology itself into a weapon. "This is monstrous," she whispered. "You've condemned them to endless suffering." "We've given them exactly what they deserve," Chen replied without a trace of remorse. "They wanted to consume everything in their path. Now they get to consume Earth diseases instead. Consider it a learning experience. But the implications, if humanity can do this to the Devourers, what's to stop you from doing it to us?" Chen leaned forward in her command chair, her expression becoming suddenly serious. "Absolutely nothing, Ambassador. That's something you should remember as we begin our expansion into galactic space. Humanity doesn't just bring solutions, we bring consequences. The galaxy is about to learn that some problems require a Deathworlder's touch." As if to emphasize her words, the tactical display showed the final collapse of the Devourer orbital network. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were now drifting helplessly, their crews too sick to function. Humanity had kept its promise. The Devourer threat was ended. But as Vex Harley watched the human fleet begin its victory formation, she realized that the galaxy's real problems were just beginning. 3 weeks after the neutralization of the Kepler Prime Devourer swarm, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session aboard the orbital station Harmony, one of the few major installations the Devourers hadn't reached. The Great Assembly Hall, designed to accommodate representatives from 80 to 7 different species, felt hollow and diminished with barely 30 delegates present. Ambassador Vex Harley stood at the primary podium, her four arms clasped behind her back as she addressed the survivors of galactic civilization. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like the gravity of a gas giant, crushing and inescapable. "Fellow delegates," she began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber, "we face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history, not just the Devourer threat, which has been contained, but the consequences of how we chose to deal with that threat." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. The ethereals flickered with agitation, their translucent forms betraying emotional states they usually kept hidden. The crystalline collective's representative resonated with low-frequency distress harmonics. Even the normally stoic reptilian delegation showed signs of unease. "The human fleet has not withdrawn to their quarantine zone," continued Councillor Threshmack, his elderly ethereal form pulsing with accusatory patterns. "Instead, they have established patrol routes through 17 star systems. They claim to be hunting down remaining Devourer cells, but intelligence reports suggest they are mapping our defensive installations." "Worse," added Representative Clickstar of the Insectoid Collectives, her mandibles clicking rapidly with stress. "They have begun broadcasting what they call humanitarian aid announcements to worlds across the Outer Rim. They are offering protection services to any planet willing to accept human oversight." Vex Harley felt her throat sacs contract with dread. She had feared something like this. Humanity hadn't just solved their Devourer problem. They had used it as an excuse to position themselves strategically throughout galactic space. "What kind of protection services?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Military advisors," Clickstar replied. "Defensive systems upgrades, biological warfare consultation. And in exchange they request modest territorial concessions, mining rights, and what they term cultural exchange programs."
The last phrase sent chills through every delegate present.
Cultural exchange with humans meant exposing their populations to Deathworlder influence. It meant allowing a predator species direct access to their societies. How many worlds have accepted these offers? Vexhaley asked. 43 so far, Threshmack replied. Mostly outer rim colonies that bore the brunt of the Devourer attacks. They are desperate for protection, and humanity is the only force that has proven capable of stopping the Devourers. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated. A new voice filled the hall. Calm, professional, and unmistakably human. Greetings, delegates of the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Chen requesting permission to address your assembly. The delegates exchanged shocked glances. The station's security systems hadn't detected any approaching vessels. Yet somehow, the humans had penetrated the communication network without triggering any alarms. Admiral, Vexhaley responded, fighting to keep her voice steady. This is a closed council session. Your presence was not requested. My apologies, Ambassador, but I felt it was important to clarify some apparent misunderstandings about human activities in galactic space. May I have permission to dock? I believe a face-to-face conversation would be more productive. The station's docking bays are sealed, Threshmack interjected. No ships are permitted to approach without council authorization. I understand, Chen replied. However, I should mention that my ship is already docked. Bay 7, I believe. My security team is conducting standard safety sweeps as we speak. Panic erupted in the assembly hall. How had an entire human vessel approached the station undetected? The implications were staggering. If humans could bypass their best defensive systems so easily, what did that say about galactic security? That's impossible, Vexhaley stammered. Our sensors would have detected any approaching vessel. Your sensors are calibrated to detect conventional spacecraft, Chen's voice carried a note of amusement. Human ships use different principles. We've had 3 centuries to develop interesting alternatives to your standard technologies. 10 minutes later, Admiral Chen walked into the council chamber, accompanied by 2 human marines. The effect on the assembled delegates was immediate and visceral. Despite her relatively small stature, humans averaged smaller than most council species. Chen radiated an aura of controlled violence that made every prey instinct in the room scream warnings. She moved like a predator, each step calculated and precise. Her eyes swept the chamber with the cold assessment of a hunter evaluating potential threats. When she smiled, showing teeth that were clearly designed for tearing flesh, several delegates instinctively backed away from their podiums. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Chen said, taking position at the center of the chamber. I wanted to address the concerns that seem to be circulating about human activities. Admiral, Vexhaley began, your forces have established military presence in Sovereign Council space without authorization. This violates every treaty and agreement that governs interstellar relations. What treaties? Chen asked, her tone genuinely curious. Humanity was never party to any galactic agreements. You quarantined us, remember? We were specifically excluded from your legal framework. The truth of that statement hit the delegates like a physical blow. For 3 centuries they had treated humanity as a non-entity, a problem to be contained rather than a civilization to be negotiated with. They had no legal framework for dealing with humans because they had never intended to deal with humans. Furthermore, Chen continued, we're not operating in council space. We're operating in space that belongs to worlds that have requested our protection. Last time I checked, planetary sovereignty was still recognized under galactic law. You're coercing vulnerable worlds, Councillor Threshmack accused, taking advantage of their desperation to establish military footholds. Chen's expression didn't change, but something in the chamber's atmosphere shifted. The 2 Marines flanking her seemed to become more alert, and Vexhaley noticed that both humans had positioned themselves with clear lines of sight to all exits. Councillor Threshmack, Chen said slowly, are you accusing humanity of the same tactics the Council used when establishing the quarantine zone? Because I have recordings of the debates where your own delegates discussed the need to leverage fear of human aggression to maintain species compliance with containment protocols. Threshmack's translucent form flickered with embarrassment. The Council had indeed used fear of humanity as a political tool for centuries, convincing member species that cooperation was necessary to maintain the quarantine. That was different, Threshmack protested weakly. We were protecting galactic civilization, and now we're protecting the survivors of that civilization, Chen replied. The difference is that we're actually effective at it. Representative Clickstar stepped forward, her insectoid form clicking with agitation. What do you want from us, Admiral? What are humanity's true intentions? Chen's smile returned, and this time it held no warmth whatsoever. Our intentions are quite simple, Representative. We want recognition. We want respect. And we want to take our rightful place as a galactic power. And if we refuse? Vexhali asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Then you'll continue to be irrelevant, Chen replied bluntly. Look around this chamber, Ambassador. 3 weeks ago, there were 87 species represented here. Today, there are 30. In another month, there might be 20. The Council is dying, and everyone knows it. She gestured to the massive display showing galactic territorial maps. Red zones marked Devourer-controlled space, but increasingly, blue zones showed systems under human protection. Humanity didn't destroy the Council, Chen continued. We just arrived in time to inherit it. The question is whether you want to be part of the transition or whether you want to spend your final years pretending you still have authority you clearly lost the moment you called us for help. The brutal honesty of her words struck the chamber like a physical assault. Every delegate present knew she was right. The Council's authority had been built on the assumption that they could handle galactic threats. The Devourer invasion had shattered that assumption completely. What terms are you offering? Vexhali asked quietly, her political instincts recognizing a negotiation when she heard one.
Full Council membership for humanity, Chen replied immediately.
Retroactive recognition of all protection agreements we've signed with individual worlds, and revision of the Galactic Legal Code to acknowledge that different species may require different approaches to law enforcement.
Different approaches? Threshmack asked suspiciously. Let me be clear, Chen said, her voice taking on a harder edge.
Humanity will not be bound by legal frameworks designed for herbivorous herd species. We are predators, and we will govern ourselves according to predator ethics. Our clients understand this and accept it. The Council can accept it too, or become irrelevant. The implications were staggering. Chen was essentially demanding the right to operate outside traditional galactic law, while still maintaining membership in the governing body. It was diplomatic extortion on a scale that would have been unthinkable just a month ago. And if we agree to these terms, Vexhali asked, what guarantees do we have that humanity won't simply consume the rest of galactic civilization the way the Devourers tried to?
Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the assembled delegates with those forward-facing predator eyes.
When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. None, she admitted. You have no guarantees at all, but you have a choice. You can work with us and maintain some influence over the galaxy's future, or you can oppose us and watch that future be decided without your input. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. The age of the Galactic Council is over, Chen concluded. The age of human expansion has begun. The only question is whether you want to be allies or obstacles. As the Admiral and her Marines left the chamber, Vexhali found herself staring at the galactic display with new understanding. The blue zones representing human-protected space weren't defensive positions. They were the early stages of a conquest that would make the Devourer invasion look like a minor inconvenience. She had saved galactic civilization by inviting in a force that would transform it beyond recognition. The question now was whether anything recognizable would survive the transformation. 6 months after the Devourer crisis, the galaxy had transformed into something unrecognizable. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UES Dominion, watching the orbital shipyards of New Geneva construct the largest fleet in galactic history. What had once been a minor trading outpost was now humanity's primary naval base, its facilities expanding daily as more worlds requested human protection. The statistics were staggering. Humanity now held security agreements with over 200 worlds, controlled 37 major trade routes, and maintained active military installations in 46 star systems. The blue zones on galactic maps had grown from scattered islands to vast archipelagos of human influence. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sarah Morrison from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen aboard the Retaliation. She's requesting an update on the vegan situation." Webb nodded, pulling his attention away from the construction yards. The vegan crisis had been developing for weeks, and it represented exactly the kind of challenge that tested humanity's new role as galactic arbiter. "Put her through." Chen's image materialized on the main screen, transmitted from the bridge of her flagship somewhere in the Outer Rim. Even across the light years, her presence commanded immediate attention. "Captain Webb," she began without preamble, "what's the status on Vega Prime?" "My intelligence reports suggest the situation is deteriorating rapidly." Webb called up the relevant files on his personal display. "The Vegan Collective has formally rejected human protection offers, Admiral. They've established what they're calling a traditional alliance with 12 other systems, all committed to maintaining pre-war governmental structures. And their military capabilities? Negligible, Webb admitted. The vegans are primarily a research civilization. Their defensive capabilities were designed for exploration vessel escort, not actual warfare. The traditional alliance has maybe 40 ships total, most of them converted civilian vessels. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Webb had served under her long enough to recognize the calculating look in her eyes. Any strategic value to the vegan system? Significant. They control 3 major hyperspace junction points, plus the largest xenobiology research facilities in the galaxy. More importantly, they're trying to establish themselves as a rallying point for species that want to resist human expansion. I see. Chen was quiet for a moment, studying data streams that Webb couldn't see.
What's our legal position? Webb pulled up another set of files. Complex. The vegans haven't violated any of our security agreements since they never signed any.
However, their recent propaganda broadcasts could be interpreted as encouraging rebellion in human-protected systems, and their research facilities contain biological materials that could theoretically be weaponized against human forces. It was a thin justification, and they both knew it. But in the new galactic order, thin justifications were often sufficient. Humanity had learned to craft legal frameworks that supported their strategic objectives while maintaining the appearance of lawful behavior. "Captain," Chen said slowly, "I want you to take a small task force to the vegan system. Make one final offer of protection services. If they refuse, implement Protocol 7. Webb felt his stomach tighten. Protocol 7 was one of humanity's more controversial innovations in galactic diplomacy, a systematic approach to dealing with what they termed non-compliant civilizations. It was legal under human interpretation of galactic law, but it was also ruthless in a way that made many of Webb's subordinates uncomfortable. "Admiral, the vegans haven't actually threatened human interests. They're just trying to maintain their independence." "Captain," Chen's voice took on a harder edge, "independence is a luxury that species earn through strength. The vegans have chosen to position themselves as a symbol of resistance to human authority. That makes them a threat regardless of their intentions." Webb understood the logic, even as it disturbed him. Humanity's galactic strategy relied on the perception of inevitability. If species believed that resistance was futile, they were more likely to cooperate voluntarily. The vegans' successful defiance threatened that perception. "Understood, Admiral. What level of force authorization?" "Whatever is necessary to ensure compliance. But Webb, make sure there are survivors to tell the story. Fear is only effective if there are witnesses to spread it." The transmission ended, leaving Webb alone with his orders and his conscience. He had joined the human military to protect Earth from external threats. Somehow, over the past 6 months, that mission had evolved into imposing human will on the galaxy through fear and superior firepower. 3 days later, the UES Dominion led a task force of 6 ships into the vegan system. The response from Vega Prime was immediate and predictable, a flood of communication requests, diplomatic protests, and appeals to galactic law. Webb authorized one final conversation with the vegan leadership. The alien that appeared on his screen was tall and reed-thin, with large eyes that spoke of a species evolved for intelligence rather than conflict. "I am Prime Researcher Velnara," the vegan said, her translated voice carrying obvious stress. "Captain Webb, we have monitored your approach and must protest this violation of our sovereign space." "Prime Researcher," Webb replied, keeping his tone professional. "I'm here to offer your people one final opportunity to accept human protection services. The galaxy has become a dangerous place, and isolated worlds are vulnerable to threats you may not have considered."
"We are aware of the risks," Valnara responded.
"We choose to face them as a free people rather than accept subjugation disguised as protection." Webb had to admire her courage, even as he prepared to destroy everything she represented.
"Prime Researcher, you misunderstand the nature of our protection services."
"Worlds under human oversight maintain full autonomy in domestic affairs. We only require cooperation in matters of mutual security." "Mutual security," Valnara repeated, her large eyes showing what humans would have recognized as bitter amusement. "Captain, we have monitored human protection activities throughout the galaxy. Worlds under your oversight have seen their governments restructured, their trade policies dictated, and their populations subjected to what you term cultural adaptation programs. This is not protection. It is conquest by another name." The accusation hung between them like a weapon neither wanted to acknowledge. Webb knew she was right.
Humanity's protection agreements included clauses that gave human administrators increasing authority over local affairs. It was a gradual process, but the end result was always the same: human control. Prime Researcher, I must inform you that your recent propaganda broadcasts have been interpreted as encouraging rebellion in human-protected systems. This constitutes a threat to galactic stability. If you do not agree to cease these activities and accept human oversight, we will be forced to implement security measures. Velnara's expression didn't change, but something in her posture suggested she had expected this ultimatum. Captain Webb, I studied human history during the quarantine years. I know about your species' approach to what you call manifest destiny. We will not willingly become another conquered people in your expanding empire. Then you leave us no choice. Webb terminated the communication and turned to his tactical officer. Begin Protocol 7 implementation. Start with their communication satellites. I want them isolated within the first hour. Then target their defensive installations. Minimize civilian casualties, but make sure the message is clear. The attack was swift and methodical. Human ships moved through the vegan system like predators through a herd, dismantling defensive positions with surgical precision. The vegans' converted civilian vessels tried to mount a resistance, but their weapons were designed for scientific exploration, not warfare against human military technology. Within 6 hours, Vega Prime's orbital infrastructure was in ruins. Their communication networks were destroyed, their defensive positions eliminated, and their small fleet reduced to drifting wreckage. But Webb had followed his orders. There were survivors, and those survivors would remember what happened when worlds defied humanity. Captain, Morrison reported from the communication station, we're receiving surrender signals from the planetary surface. Prime Researcher Velnara is requesting permission to negotiate terms. Tell her the terms are non-negotiable, Webb replied. Full acceptance of human protection services, including security oversight and cultural adaptation programs. If they agree within the next hour, we'll provide humanitarian aid for their wounded. If they refuse, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood what refusal meant. The response came 47 minutes later. The vegans accepted human protection. As the task force prepared to leave the system, Webb found himself studying the tactical reports. 17 defensive installations destroyed. 43 ships eliminated. Approximately 2,000 vegan casualties, most of them military personnel who had tried to defend their world. It had been a textbook execution of Protocol 7. Swift, decisive, and designed to send a message to any other worlds considering resistance. The vegans would serve as an example of what happened to species that chose defiance over cooperation. But as Webb watched the human administrative vessels moving toward Vega Prime to begin the integration process, he couldn't shake the feeling that something essential had been lost in the galaxy's transformation. The Council species might have been naive, but they had at least tried to build a civilization based on cooperation rather than force. Humanity was building something more efficient, more stable, and ultimately more successful. But it was also building something that would have been unrecognizable to the humans who had first looked up at the stars and dreamed of finding friends among the cosmos. Captain, Morrison called. Admiral Chen is requesting an after-action report. Tell the Admiral that the vegan situation has been resolved. Webb replied. The traditional alliance is expected to formally dissolve within the next week. All member systems have indicated willingness to discuss human protection agreements. As he dictated the report, Webb realized that he was documenting the death of galactic independence. One system at a time, one battle at a time, humanity was consuming the galaxy as efficiently as the Devourers had ever managed. The difference was that when humans consumed civilizations, they left the inhabitants alive to serve the new order. 1 year after the first desperate plea for human assistance, Ambassador Vexhali stood in what had once been the Galactic Council chambers aboard Harmony Station. The vast hall that had represented 3 centuries of interstellar cooperation now served as the administrative center for the Human Colonial Authority, where 87 species had once debated as equals. Human officials now processed integration reports from across the galaxy. The transformation was complete in ways that still took her breath away. Admiral Chen, now bearing the title of Galactic Administrator, occupied the central podium where the Council's rotating leadership had once stood. Her uniform carried new insignia, not just the markings of Earth's military, but symbols representing humanity's new role as the galaxy's governing authority. Around her, human staff members coordinated activities across 400 star systems, managing what had become the largest political entity in recorded galactic history. Ambassador Vexhali, Chen called, noticing her arrival. Perfect timing. I was just reviewing the integration statistics from your home system.
The Zephyrian worlds have adapted remarkably well to human administration. Vex Harley approached the central platform, her forearms clasped behind her back in what had become a gesture of resignation rather than diplomacy. Administrator Chen, I must admit the efficiency of the transition has been impressive. It wasn't praise exactly, but it was acknowledgement of reality. The human administration had indeed transformed galactic civilization with remarkable speed. Trade routes that had taken months to negotiate under council oversight now operated with clockwork precision. Conflicts that might have festered for decades under the old system were resolved within days of human intervention. The cost, of course, was autonomy. Your people have been particularly cooperative, Chen continued, studying data streams on her personal display. Crime rates down 70%, economic productivity up 45%, and zero incidents of civil unrest. The cultural adaptation programs seem to be working exactly as designed. Vex Halley suppressed a shudder at the phrase. Cultural adaptation programs were humanity's most insidious tool of control. They didn't conquer civilizations, they transformed them. Within a single generation, subject species began to think like humans, act like humans, and accept human authority as natural and inevitable. Children on Zephyrian worlds now learned human history alongside their own. They studied human philosophy, human literature, human approaches to problem solving. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to prefer these lessons to their traditional education. Administrator, Vex Harley began carefully, I've received reports from the Outer Rim territories. The final holdout systems have begun requesting protection services. The Crystalline Collective sent formal surrender terms yesterday. Surrender is such an ugly word, Chen replied with that predatory smile that had become her trademark. I prefer to think of it as voluntary integration. The collective leadership simply recognized that cooperation was in their people's best interests. Vex Harley knew better. The Crystalline Collective had held out longer than any other major civilization, using their unique silicon-based biology to resist human biological weapons, and their distributed consciousness to counter human psychological warfare tactics. Their capitulation hadn't been voluntary, it had been inevitable. What were the final terms? Vex Harley asked, though she suspected she already knew. Standard integration package, Chen replied. Human administrative oversight, defensive fleets stationed in their core systems, cultural adaptation programs for their youth, and economic restructuring to integrate with galactic trade networks. In exchange, they maintain domestic autonomy and receive full protection against external threats. It was the same package offered to every world that requested human protection. The same package that had transformed the galaxy from a loose confederation of independent civilizations into a unified empire governed from Earth. And the other holdouts? Chen gestured to the massive galactic display that dominated one wall of the chamber, where once it had shown the chaotic patchwork of different territorial claims, trade zones, and neutral spaces that characterized the old galactic order. It now displayed a remarkably uniform blue expanse. Human administrative zones covered 90% of inhabited space. The nomadic fleets signed protection agreements last month, Chen reported. The deep space monasteries have requested cultural exchange programs. Even the forbidden zones have agreed to limited human oversight. By my estimates, we'll have complete galactic integration within 6 months. Vex Harley stared at the display, trying to comprehend the scale of what humanity had accomplished. In less than 2 years, they had gone from being a quarantined curiosity to governing the largest political entity in galactic history. They had achieved through careful manipulation what the Devourers had attempted through brute force consumption. Administrator, she said quietly, what happens now? Humanity has achieved total dominance over galactic civilization. What are your species' long-term objectives? Chen turned to face her directly, and for a moment, Vex Harley saw something unsettling in the human's expression. It wasn't cruelty exactly, or even satisfaction. It was the calm certainty of a predator that had successfully claimed new territory. Our objectives are quite simple, Ambassador. We intend to build a galactic civilization that can survive anything the universe throws at it. The Council model failed because it was built on the assumption that cooperation was natural and conflict was aberrant. We know better. She gestured to the data streams flowing across the chamber's displays, economic reports, military deployments, population statistics, technological development indices. All of it coordinated through human oversight, all of it designed to maximize efficiency and minimize the possibility of internal conflict. Human administration is based on the understanding that conflict is natural and cooperation must be enforced, Chen continued. We don't rely on species' goodwill or shared values.
We create structures that make cooperation the most profitable option, and resistance impossibly costly. And if species object to these structures, then they adapt or become irrelevant, Chen replied without hesitation. That's how evolution works, Ambassador. Species that can't adapt to changing environments don't survive. We're simply accelerating the process. Vex Harley felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. Chen wasn't describing conquest. She was describing selective breeding applied to entire civilizations. Humanity wasn't just ruling the galaxy, they were reshaping it in their own image. There is one more matter to discuss, Chen said, calling up a new set of files on her display. The Devourer situation has been fully resolved. Our biological warfare specialists have developed permanent immunity protocols for all known strains. The remaining Devourer bioforms have been contained in research facilities for further study. Study for what purpose? Chen's smile returned, and this time it carried implications that made Vex Harley's skin crawl. The Devourers represent remarkably efficient biological technology. Their ability to convert matter directly into biomass could have significant applications for terraforming, resource extraction, and population management. With proper controls, they could become valuable tools for galactic development. The casual way Chen discussed weaponizing the galaxy's former greatest threat spoke volumes about humanity's approach to problem-solving. They didn't just defeat their enemies, they found ways to make them useful. Administrator, Vex Harley said, choosing her words very carefully, some species might interpret the controlled use of Devourer technology as a threat to their security.
Some species, Chen agreed, might be correct.
The galaxy has learned to coexist peacefully under human administration. Any attempt to disrupt that peace would be met with appropriate countermeasures. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Humanity had not just conquered the galaxy, they had created the ultimate insurance policy against rebellion. Any world that challenged human authority could find itself facing the same fate the Devourers had once threatened, but under human control and with surgical precision. However, Chen continued, we don't anticipate such measures will be necessary. Our psychological profiling suggests that most species adapt quite well to stable governance. Within a generation or two, the current transition period will be remembered as a historical curiosity rather than a traumatic transformation. Vex Harley understood what Chen was really saying. Humanity's cultural adaptation programs weren't just changing how subject species behaved. They were changing how they thought, how they remembered, how they defined concepts like freedom and independence. In 2 generations, the galaxy would be populated by beings who considered human rule natural and resistance unthinkable. Is there anything else you wish to discuss, Ambassador? Chen asked, already turning her attention back to the constant stream of administrative data flowing across her displays. Just one question, Vex Harley replied. Do you ever regret it? The way things developed after we asked for your help. Chen paused, considering the question with what seemed like genuine thoughtfulness. When she answered, her voice carried no trace of doubt or remorse. Ambassador, my species spent 300 years confined to a single system, treated like a dangerous curiosity by civilizations that were too weak to survive their first real crisis. We watched you build a galaxy-spanning society and then collapse the moment you faced a threat that required actual strength to overcome. She gestured again to the galactic display, to the uniform blue expanse that represented human dominance. We didn't destroy your civilization, Chen concluded. We inherited it, and unlike you, we have the strength to keep it. As Vex Harley left the chamber, she reflected on the truth of Chen's words. The humans hadn't lied about their intentions or deceived the galaxy about their nature. They had been exactly what their classification suggested. Apex predators from a death world, adapted for survival in the most hostile environment imaginable. The galaxy had called upon them for help, and they had provided exactly the kind of help that predators offer, efficient, ruthless, and ultimately successful. They had solved the Devourer crisis, ended galactic warfare, eliminated poverty, disease, and conflict on scales that the Council had never imagined possible. They had created a golden age for galactic civilization. The fact that it was a golden cage didn't seem to matter to the species living within it. Most were healthier, safer, and more prosperous than they had ever been under Council rule. Their children were being educated to higher standards, their economies were more stable, and their futures were more secure than any previous generation had known. That those futures were all predetermined by human administrators was a detail that fewer and fewer beings seemed to care about with each passing year. As she walked through Harmony Station's corridors, now bustling with human officials and their alien assistants working together with remarkable efficiency, Vexali finally understood the true genius of humanity's approach to galactic conquest. They hadn't destroyed the galaxy's civilizations, they had improved them. And improvement, unlike destruction, was very difficult to resist. The galaxy had called for salvation, and humanity had provided exactly that. The fact that salvation came with a price that most species didn't fully understand until it was too late was simply another example of human efficiency. They had given the galaxy exactly what it asked for, exactly what it needed, and exactly what it deserved. The age of human dominance had begun not with conquest, but with an invitation. And that, Vexali reflected, was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all.